Now, unions do protect some workers. Unions protect two classes of workers: those of their members who are employed and the union officials who run the unions. But if you're going to look at this as a general answer, you have to recognize that only about 1/5 of all the workers in the United States are members of trade unions. And many of those are members of wholly ineffective trade unions, of trade unions that have had very little effect on the wages of their members or the working conditions of their members. It's very interesting to consider the actual experience of unions and compare it with the talk about unions that emanates from union leaders, union headquarters, and defenders of unions. If you listen to the talk, you will get the impression that unions exist to protect the workers who are way down on the income scale. The talk is always about the necessity of protecting or helping the low-skilled workers against exploitation by employers. But suppose I were to ask you, which are the strongest unions in the United States? Which unions in the United States are strongest in the sense of having been most successful in raising the wage rates, the earnings of their members? The answer is very clear and very definite. Probably the single most successful union in the United States from this point of view is the Airline Pilots Union. Now, this is a union whose members typically receive salaries or wages somewhere around $50,000 to $100,000. They are hardly the poor, deprived, exploited workers of union literature. They have been very successful because they have been able to have a very strongly organized union, and they have, for reasons which I will come to later, been in a position to limit entry into the union and into the occupation. In my opinion, the next strongest union in the United States is an organization that the people in this room will not regard as a union, but that's what it is. In my opinion, the next strongest union in the United States has been the American Medical Association. Now, the American Medical Association is not a traditional union, but it is a union from an economic point of view. It is an organization of people pursuing a particular trade which has tried to control the practice of medicine in such a way as to improve the conditions of its members. If you ask a union leader, what is the function of a union? He will agree with you, and he will emphasize, and rightly, that the first and primary function of a union is to improve the working conditions of its members. Well, from this point of view, the American Medical Association has on the whole done very well. Again, let me emphasize, I do not mean in any way to be invidious. I am not criticizing the airline pilots. I am not criticizing the members of the American Medical Association. I am only trying to understand and analyze the situation. Adam Smith, in that great book on the wealth of nations, brought home to all of us that the way in which the world runs is mostly by people seeking to pursue their self-interest. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way in which we run. And he pointed out that in the right kind of a structure, in the right kind of a world, people, in pursuing their own self-interest, would also promote the general interest. So I'm not complaining or criticizing at the moment, but only analyzing. If there's any fault to be found, the fault is not to be found with the members of the pilots union or the members of the AMA, but with the rest of us for letting them get away with it. Now, the third strongest groups of unions are undoubtedly the craft unions. The carpenters, the plumbers, the plasterers, and the like. And they, again, are a group that have always been extremely high paid, that have always been among the elite of the working community. And finally, as my fourth class, and this is a newly developing class, the strongest unions have in recent years, in the past decade in particular, become the municipal unions. The unions who have played a considerable part in reducing New York City to its present state of bankruptcy. The garbage workers unions, the school teachers unions, all of the unions of municipal employees. Now, these municipal unions, of course, illustrate a very important general case that we will expand more. Why are they so strong? Because the people who arrange employment with them are not the people who pay their salaries. It's the taxpayers of New York who pay the salaries of the people, but it's the officials of New York City who make the deals with the unions. Now, that illustrates a general principle which has reached its most extreme form in Great Britain. Unions are much stronger in Great Britain than they are in the United States, and one of the major reasons they are stronger is because the government of Great Britain has nationalized a great many more industries, in particular coal mining, railroads, public utilities, telephones are all nationalized industries. And the worst labor problems in Britain have almost invariably been in those industries which are nationalized by the government, just as in the New York City and other municipal cases, the growing role of government has tended to expand the importance and the role of the unions. One of the strong unions in the United States, for the same reason, are the postal workers' unions. And so we go down the line. But the most important thing about all of these is that the strong unions tend to be among the high-paid workers. Now you have to ask yourself, are they high-paid because they are strong unions? Or are they strong unions because they are high-paid? It's a very important distinction. And the fundamental answer is, the people who are in a high-paid position are in far better position to have a strong union, and the strong unions then reinforce their position. So both things are true. Part of their high-pay position today derives from their union existence, the existence of strong unions, but they have been able to have strong unions because they are highly skilled people, relatively few in number, and therefore far more effective in being able to organize in such a way as to raise their pay. Because you must recognize that the only way in which any group of workers, through union organization, can increase the amount of its pay is to make sure that there are fewer jobs available. There is no way in which a union can simultaneously increase the number of jobs and the pay. The law of economics, the law of demand in economics is inescapable. You can't get out of it. Raise the price of anything, and fewer people will want to buy it. Make labor more expensive in any area. Make carpenters more expensive. The number of jobs available for carpenters will be less. Make physicians more expensive. The number of jobs available for physicians will be less. Make airline pilots more expensive. The number of jobs available for airline pilots will be fewer. As a result, the gains of the group of workers I've been talking about, or other union workers, are at the expense, the union workers gain at the expense of other workers. The only way, as I say, in which they can get a higher pay is by arranging things so that there end up being fewer jobs, and that means that other people who might be perfectly competent, who might be perfectly available for such jobs, are denied those jobs. As consumer, not only so the effect of the higher pay of unions is lower pay for all other workers. I once made the estimate, this was 20-odd years ago, but since there have been a number of studies that have confirmed this judgment, that on the average about 10 to 15% of the workers in this country had been able through a union organization to raise the level of their pay by something like 10 to 15%. That this had been at the cost of a roughly 4% reduction in the wages earned by the other 85%. So the effect has been to raise the pay of high-paid workers and lower the pay of low-paid workers.